Hey, FlimsyLunchTray here with our Saturday edition video being an upgrade and commander build video of the Tier 5 American destroyer, the Nicholas. This is a destroyer that I really enjoy in World of Warships, especially playing low tiers. At Tier 5, she's a really solid destroyer overall with a lot of potential in many different ways. So, we are going to be looking at the modules of the ship. We're going to be looking at the upgrades, and we're going to look at the commander build as well that I'm going to recommend. In addition, we're going to talk about when we do discuss destroyers and doing an upgrade commander build video, we also like to discuss what type of a destroyer are we talking about. Well, the American destroyers, for the most part, there's a few exceptions there, but they're hybrid destroyers. So you get three types of destroyers in World of Warships. You get the gunboat destroyer, you get a torpedo boat destroyer, and then you get the hybrid, which is basically just a mix between the two of them, which honestly, that's what we find here with Nicholas. When we look at her guns, she's got four 127 millimeters guns, two on the front and then two on the stern. And then we look at the torpedoes, which is quite fun. We get four sets of three 533 millimeter torpedoes, which you can see here, 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 and here, that have a 5.5 kilometer range. So she's definitely not a stealth torp destroyer, but the torpedoes are good, the guns are good, so she's basically a hybrid. So let's go ahead and dive in and looking at the modules of the ship. I'm going to actually go ahead and remove some combat signals I left up from battling the other day, so it doesn't mess with the stats that I'm going to be sharing. Alright, so when you look at her module, she's got one upgrade that leads you on to the Tier 6 Farragut, but the Hull A, Hull B. So you can actually see that you get an additional 1,100 hit points. You get, looks like, is it a reduction? See, AA mounts 12. So you get 12 AA mounts instead of just the 4. And then you can see how the artillery is better, as well as the AA defense, which you definitely need. And then the maneuverability gets a little bit of an upgrade. So you're dealing with survivability expert, 14,850 HP or health pool. She's got the armor between 6 to 21 millimeters, 4 main turrets, 4 torpedo tubes, and the 12 AA mounts as we just discussed. I feel like I tend to get more double CV games matches at the lower tier, or just CVs in general. So having the additional AA is highly recommended, so you definitely want to get this module upgrade as soon as possible if you've just acquired the ship. Now, we're going to look at upgrades, and then we'll look at the consumables, if I remember, because I shared something in yesterday's video that I need to kind of add some clarification to. So for the slot 1, I recommend the main armaments modification. So the risk of your main battery and torpedo tubes from becoming incapacitated is reduced by negative 20%. Your main battery survivability and your torpedo tube survivability is improved by plus 50%. And then if your main battery or torpedo tubes should be incapacitated, the repair time is reduced by negative 20%. So all in all, it's just really good to have on a Nicholas, especially when you're just looking at her. You know, when a lot of ships are focusing, they're kind of aiming more here, and then maybe as you're booking along, your torpedoes get incapacitated. So anything you can help do to buff the survivability of them is really good for the Nicholas. And then as far as the other mounts go, it looks like we have a sailor right now as I record this. I don't recommend the magazine modification 1. It's just the risk of your ship's magazine detonating is reduced by negative 70%. As I always share with you guys, when you go to signals, you can just simply mount the Juliet Charlie combat signal, which completely eliminates the risk of your ship's magazine detonating. So when you're playing random battles, I guess I shouldn't say clan battles because they don't really ever get down to tier 5, ranked, that kind of thing, I always take these. I don't really mess with taking them in co-op because it's just a waste of signal. For slot 2, you're going to want to take, you have several options, to be honest. Of the two stock standard I take the engine room protection because the damage control system modification, that's really more for like if you're a cruiser or battleship per se. In most cases, just not always, but most cases. But you want your engine, if your engine does become incapacitated or your steering gears become incapacitated, the repair time is reduced by -20%. And let's say your damage control party is on cooldown, you're going to need that, as well as the engine repair time and steering gear repair time reduced by -20%. Now, you can see here you also have the engine boost modification. So it adds plus 30% to our engine. So the maneuverability on the Nicholas right now is 37 knots. So then you take the engine boost, which is active for, let's see, action time 120 seconds, so 2 minutes. You get a plus 8% buff on your speed. So out of curiosity, I'm going to just run that through the calculator real quick. 2.96. So yeah, you're just almost touching 40 knots. So if you take this upgrade, the action time of the consumable will be improved by 30%. So right now it's 120 seconds. So then if you take that, you add 36 seconds on. So then you're going to get 156 seconds, so over 2.5 minutes. And then you also have the defensive AA fire modification. So this increases the action time and accelerates the reload speed of the defensive AA fire consumable. And that's what I said the other day. I brought up the kid, where I just said, you have engine boost on Nicholas. And I forgot that it was optional when it comes to consumables that you can switch between engine boost and you can switch to defensive AA fire. The AA defense, as I shared and mentioned, is, it's 5.8 kilometers, which is really good for tier 5 because the video yesterday, that division with Doom, his AA on the Kamikaze, Japanese torpedo destroyer, is like 1.5 kilometers. So basically I was kind of the AA bubble per se there, and helping that. So actually, to be honest, the past several days, I might actually favor taking the defensive AA fire over, because what it does is when you look at our AA defense, I already had it pulled up. We'll switch to it because you can just switch between the two. Your continuous damage is improved by plus 100%. So that's going to take you from continuous damage of 60 to 120. Your damage from shell explosions plus 300%. So that's going to give you a really good boost there as well. And, if they do fly into your flak. So that's actually really beneficial. I don't feel like when I've used the engine boost that I'm always getting... I mean, you saw yesterday, right? When those torpedoes were coming at me in the smoke screen and I popped the engine boost and it got me out of the way. That's really helpful. But I'm so annoyed when I constantly run into CVs at tier 5 that I'm like, man, I wish my AA guns were better. Like, they're okay, but I wish they were just even better. Well, I can take defensive AA fire. So I'm actually going to go ahead and put that on, and I'm going to test it out and see how I like it. Now, what these two do, we said, this one, the action time of the consumable is plus 30%. And then you have defensive AA fire modification, which increases the action time. So the action time right now is 40 seconds. So plus 20%, that's going to take you to 48 seconds. And then the other thing was the consumable reload time is reduced by 10%. So you're going to go from a reload time of 80 seconds to 72 seconds. The maps for lower tier ships are generally small speaking. So honestly, you can be, like the CV is not going to take very long to get back towards your location if he's hardcore hunting you. Now, the saving grace is with the rocket change that I know a lot of CV players are unhappy with, where if they take rocket planes, they click the trigger, there's like a 3-4 second delay before they end up actually firing. That's helped a lot, but I know there are CV players, again, like I said, that are unhappy with that change, but it has actually really helped destroyer players a lot, in my opinion. I got nailed still the other day despite the change. But so if you want to take these, what you do is you can just simply click on this and it'll take you to the armory where you purchase them. If you are new to the game, you're not going to have the access level to get quite into the armory yet. But when you do, it will be here. Or even if you're just in the armory, you just click on this one, view category, and then you can see we have our defensive AA for 17,000 coal. I always recommend spending a coupon, but alas, I have spent my coupon. I usually spend it every month because 25% off drops you down to like 12,500. And then you also will find the engine boost modification 1 here as well. So it's enticing to actually think about taking the defensive AA on this. Maybe I'm just saying that more now because I've had several double CV matches the past few days while in Nicholas, so that's why we've got the defensive AA mounted now. And then as we talked about yesterday in the video, while I'm on Consumables, you get the smoke generator, the standard. Oh, I also said something slightly wrong. No, I was okay. The action time of consumable is 30 seconds, but the smoke screen dispersion time is 115 seconds. I said 2 minutes, but then I was like, well, maybe it's a little give or take from there. But yeah, so usually they're 120 seconds, I think, as you get up to higher tier destroyers. Let's just jump up to Benson as example. Okay, so it's actually 124 seconds. What about gearing? I'm just curious. We're going to look at this while you guys are with me. 130 seconds. Okay, so it steadily seems to increase as you go higher up. So there you go. Now you know. But yeah, it's really good. Good American smoke. When it comes to the aiming systems modification in the third slot, you have the main battery modification, which increases the main battery traverse speed. Your guns rotate now 180-degree turn time of 12 seconds. So it's not bad as long as you get your guns, as you're getting engaged in fight, just get your guns turned in advance. It's not a big deal to go without it. You have the AA guns modification 1. This would also be something that would probably be also nice to have because your priority AA sector preparation time is reduced by 20%. However, I just am a fan of the aiming systems modification for several reasons. Your maximum dispersion of your main battery shells is reduced by -7%, which means you're more likely to land shells on enemy targets. Your torpedo traverse speed is plus 20%. So, let's say you're yellowing or you had a destroyer pop up on you within your 2 kilometer concealment range. I always forget what that's called. What do they call it? I always forget. Assured detectability range. You can get your torpedoes on faster in case you have to dump torps and then go. And then you have secondary battery firing range and maximum dispersion, but you don't have secondaries on the Nicholas. I think there's only like 1 or 2 destroyers in the game that actually have secondary battery on them, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, you want to take this I mainly take this just for the dispersion of the main battery shells, honestly. You also have the torpedo tubes modification 1. Your torpedo speed will be improved by plus 5%. So that will take you up to, was it like 58, 59 knots, I believe. And then the traverse speed is also improved by plus 20%, and the risk of your torpedo tubes from becoming incapacitated is -40%. Now, generally speaking, we've been talking about how the Nicholas is a hybrid destroyer, and her guns have the reload time of 4 seconds without any commander build options added too. So I kind of like to invest more into the guns since you're going to be using those more often than the torpedoes. So that's what I would recommend overall when it comes to the upgrades of the Nicholas. But granted, we did talk about, this could be a potential option here as well. So is there anything else I want to cover here? No, I don't think so. Oh, well, concealment. Let's talk about concealment real quick. Okay, I don't have a camouflage on. I do have concealment expert on my commander on the Nicholas. You can see right now it's 6 kilometer by sea, 2.2 by air. And if I go to exterior and I throw a camouflage on, it's just for funs and giggles, we throw one of those on. What this does is it reduces your detectability range by sea by -3%. And then dispersion of shells fired by enemies attacking your ship is increased by plus 4%. So that's actually nice. So we can see our detectability range by sea dropped down to 5.8 kilometers, which is, it's good at tier 5, definitely. There are other destroyers at tier 5 that are much worse. You know, as an example, let's just throw this up real quick. I'm thinking the Podvorski. And I don't know if I have the 10-point commander on him anymore either. Yeah, I mean 7.7 even with the 10 concealment expert. You're not getting him down very far. You have the Acosta. Let's see, I don't have concealment. That would actually drop him down close to. Yeah, it'd actually be about the same as Nicholas. And then you have your tier 5 destroyers, Mitsuki and Minakaze. Minakaze, 5.6. And there's a few other destroyers like the Kamikaze. You don't see those as often per se, that, you know, 5.4. So you're sitting pretty good at Nicholas in terms of concealment when you have the concealment expert and you have your camouflage mounted. Now, as I mentioned in yesterday's video, I already did have a 10-point commander. He's at 11 points now, but I have the 10-point what I call the bread and butter build of practically almost any destroyer in the game, 96% of the time, for those first 10 points being preventive maintenance. And then what this does is that it reduces the risk of your modules from becoming incapacitated, so it keeps your main turrets, your torpedo tubes, your steering gears, and engine more likely to not be incapacitated, so that's really good to take. Last stand, if your ship, your engine, or your steering gear gets knocked out, what this skill does is it keeps you somewhat maneuverable and you're able to sustain speed partially. This is vital as a destroyer player. Every destroyer player needs to take this skill. It's a 3-point or 2-point skill, 3-point build so far. So you really need to have this on your destroyer, because you just don't want to be a sitting duck. If your engine gets knocked out, you're an easy kill. Or if your steering gears get knocked out, then maybe you're just doing circles, and you know, that's kind of frustrating. For 6 points, 6-point commander, this is a 3rd-point skill. You're going to be going for survivability experts, defense skill. Increases the health pool for each ship tier. So 350 times 5 gets us up to this nice hefty 14,850. And then you have your concealment expert, which we discussed, with camouflage gets us down to 5.8, and a detectability range by air of 2.2 kilometers. So that is really good and handy to have. And really, I feel like just to begin to feel like you will handle the game better as a destroyer player, you at least need 10 points in going player versus player interaction. Just for me, because I've played the higher tiers, I have higher point commanders, you know, my Kid, my Gearing, my Shimakaze. When I go to lower tier and I don't have a commander that has at least a 10-point bread and butter build, it can be frustrating to be constantly out detected by destroyers. As you can see, some good competition here at the lower tiers. So, where would I recommend going from here? Well, let's see, I'm going to recommend 2 builds. I'm actually torn between which of the 2 I'm going to go for. So take that as you will. So what am I going to do with a 13-point commander? Because the next skill I want to take is an Adrenaline Rush, and I need to be a level 13 to get that. So yeah, I want to do Adrenaline Rush regardless. What this does is that as you lose health, 1% of HP loss on your ship, this skill will enhance certain parameters on your ship, such as the main battery reload time, your torpedo tube reload time, your continuous AA damage will get increased. For a torpedo and main battery reload time, it's a decrease, so that means your guns are reloading faster, your torpedoes are reloading faster, but then your AA is going to be doing some more damage, continuous damage slightly. This is just really nice to have, because I think honestly, if this would get your torpedoes, if you take enough damage, your torpedoes would be reloading in less than a minute, because right now they reload at 66 seconds, but we're going to talk about the torpedoes a little bit more here in a moment for a 3rd possible build if you wanted to on the Nicholas. So this is definitely what I intend to do with a 13-point commander. And then let's see, I'm trying to remember. Yes, and then this is the next skill I'll take regardless. So this would be a 16-point build commander here. This is main battery and AA specialist. Your main battery reload time is improved by -5%, which means you go from a 4-second reload time to a 3.8-second reload time. And then in addition, you get a 10% bonus to your continuous AA damage. So we pull up AA defense. We go from a 60 to 66. And you can kind of see here when I hover over where the buff is kind of being applied to, the damage by short range AA and damage by long range AA kind of gets mixed between the two. So that's, I mean, anything, honestly, at this tier, like I said, I've just been doing with a lot of carriers at tier 5 lately. Any little buff I can get to my AA, I'm definitely going to take. So this is what I definitely intend to do with the 16-point build. Now, when we're talking about the AA, because this is the only skill as a destroyer player right now that buffs your AA, I'm going to confirm that just looking through here real quick. Yeah, so this is the only skill you can take as a destroyer player that buffs your AA. Now, as often as I like to point out, you have combat signals, and we can actually buff our AA even more with this combat signal, November Echo Set 7. Our continuous AA damage goes up by another 5%, and then damage from AA shell explosions go up by 5%. So watch, I'm about to click on it, but look at the right side of the screen and watch the continuous AA damage and damage by shell explosions go up. So 63 to, and then 1,103. And then I go back in here and I click on the skills I intend to take. 69, and then that's still 1,103 because it's just continuous AA damage. So it's continuing to move up. So, went from 60 to 66, and then we throw that signal on, then we were at 69. So that's good. So this is definitely recommended. And then from here, there's going to be there's two ways I'm debating in my mind of which way do I want to go, because we've got 5 points left out of this 16-point build commander. So that means we can definitely still do a 4-point skill. So this is kind of the first one that's been going through my mind lately. That is RPF, radio position. Radio position frequency. It's basically just radio location. They changed the name of what it was called from the commander rework of 0.10.0, and this video is happening during 0.10.6, and we're about to get the other commander rework happening at 0.10.7. So things might change if you're tuning in later in terms of the destroyer skills. But what this skill does is that after the skill is mastered, the player will have the direction to the nearest enemy ship indicated to them. The enemy player will be alerted that a bearing was taken on their ship, so the enemy player will have like this little located sign, and it's kind of like with these epicenter circle rings moving out. And then you'll get this arrow, so you can see, your ship's moving this direction, nearest enemy ship is off this direction. So that's what it does. It gives you a general idea of where the closest enemy ship is towards you. I've had a couple matches where this would have been helpful to have, because there are some destroyers that out-detect you at the tier, but it gives you kind of a foot up to being able to prepare, have all your guns focusing that direction, especially if there's, say, a destroyer on the enemy team who's gone dark for a little while, and you're not sure where he is. He's running around maybe in your spawner. Maybe he's in spawn, maybe he's towards the cap. You don't know. But then you have this, and now you're able to figure out, oh, he's this way. He's actually in spawn going for our carrier player, as an example. So that will just help you in general. So I've been thinking this, and then I've also been thinking the incoming fire alert. So a warning about a salvo fired at your ship from a distance of more than 4.5 kilometers. So if an enemy battleship fires at me, let's say 8 kilometers away, I get this little incoming warning flash up on my center right of my screen. And that's telling me, oh, someone just shot at me. I need to maneuver, I need to change direction, play with my speed, something like that. So I'm debating this right now. Not sure how I feel about it yet, but I'm going to play around with the Nicholas a little bit more, figure out which way I want to go. The second build option is more standard, if you will, in terms of American destroyers. And that is taking the superintendent. So then the number of consumables you have, we go from having 3 smoke screens to 4 smoke screens. And then we go from 4 defensive AA to 5 defensive AA. And I think was engine boost you only had, was it 3 of? Yeah, then you'd go from 3 engine boost to 4 engine boost. And that's kind of nice to a certain extent when taking this, because not only for the smoke, but also for the defensive AA, that you get additional one of those consumables, meaning you're able to deal more damage to CV planes longer if the battle progresses that long. You've got an additional defensive AA, and then not only that, you have an additional smoke. I had a battle last night in Nicholas. It was a double CV match. I had burned all my smokes, and me and the clanmate I was with, we had 5 kills between the 2 of us, but we were going to lose. Enemy carriers were going for me pretty hardcore. I didn't have any smoke left. I'd use it in defense of Bravo Cap on this map. And then I was basically just having to, I had my AA on the whole time, trying to prioritize different sectors. I was ducking and weaving. I wasn't able to play the objectives, anything like that, just because both the enemy carrier players were harassing me. So that was pretty frustrating. So, you could have another smoke screen in the sense that I can go conceal, and then I can just pop the defensive AA and light them up. Or just have, even if you don't go dark with, say, a smoke screen, but you have a defensive AA, you have another one on hand because it's impossible to deplane a CV now, since the CV rework. If a player is not cycling them, if he's cycling poorly and just throwing them into massive AE bubbles, then he's going to be like 1 or 2, 3 planes out of let's say squadron of 9. But that defensive AA additional one is looking appealing to me. So as I progress up, just getting to the 16-point build, then a little more time in Nicholas, that might be a deciding factor between whether I go with radio location or the superintendent. Now, as I said, second build option. So let's say you take superintendent, and then you got 2 points left. Well, I would recommend to you to take priority target. Priority target is always good in many ways. It lets you know how many ships are targeting you, is what this skill does. So it'll tell you if there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 12 enemy ships targeting you in game if you're in a randoms battle, as an example. So basically what it does is it's a situational awareness skill. So if there's a lot of ships targeting you, then let's say 3 or 4, that probably means you need to disengage, stop firing your guns, go dark. Maybe you even need to pop a smoke screen as an example, or get behind an island. Additionally, what this skill does, because you're often dealing with a lot of destroyers at this tier as well, let's say you get in a gunfight with an enemy destroyer, he's the only one targeting you, and all of a sudden you see 1, and then it's not targeting you. Then you see 1 pop back up, not targeting you. That means he's switching in from his guns to torpedoes. He's dumping torpedoes onto you while you're dueling him. So that gives you an indication of, oh, maybe I need to step on the brakes, or I need to change different direction, so on and so forth, and juking those torpedoes. So this basically just tells you when he's doing that, essentially. Flashing you, as what they call it, if you have priority target. Enemy player won't know if you have priority target, but this gives you a leg up in the situational awareness. I'm trying to think. In yesterday's video, you kind of saw how I assumed that the Vostras had dumped torpedoes in this one location, so then I made a hard right, went out, and then sure enough, we saw some torpedoes pass by. The longer you're in the game and you have more destroyer battles under your belt and more interaction with enemy destroyers, you're going to get a feel more for when a destroyer player might be dumping his torpedoes onto you, what direction, generally speaking. So then this skill maybe is not as incentivizing to you if you've been playing the game for longer. But if you're a new player, then it might be really beneficial for you in taking this build setup as an example. When I started the game for probably over the first year, probably year and a half up to the commander rework, I relied on priority target heavily. I still do with different ships, because different ships just need it. Because it used to be a 1-point skill, so it's really a no-brainer. So I would actually take it over preventive maintenance, because it didn't really bother me to not have preventive maintenance, because this was an insanely good 1-point skill. Now, since Commander rework, since it's a 2-point, it's harder to make the same type of builds that I've had in the past. So I taking it less and less on some ships because I feel comfortable without it. For certain ships, not all of them. So I'm doing a little bit better without it, but maybe for you, you do want it. So this would be the second build option. It's really a tie for me between that build and this build. The RPF is nice, but your concealment doesn't suck. You know, if I was the Podvoisky, because your concealment is so bad, even when I take Concealment Expert, you see it drops down to 7. I would definitely be taking RPF in Podvoisky, which that we can discuss that destroyer another day. But because your concealment is relatively pretty good in Nicholas, I'm kind of like, maybe I don't want radio location. Maybe I want to go with this. So it seems that I'm talking myself more into this build route versus this build route. But it's totally up to you as a player. You can decide for yourself. But regardless, base level, I would recommend this build as a 16-point commander. Now, I did reference a 13 build, or a third, not a 13, a third build option. It could be you invest in torpedoes. So you can see our torpedoes get the buff, or they go to 59 knots. And then our reload time goes from 66 seconds to 59.4 seconds. Now, granted, keep in mind, I did talk about how your torpedo range is 5.5, so you're not going to be stealth torping unless you're moving away from an enemy ship that's moving towards you. Like you're kiting away, you dump torpedoes at them, and then they end up falling in that 5.5 kilometer range. Since your concealment is 5.8, you have that window. So you could just say, I want torpedoes. Well, this is the standard hybrid build, I would say, for destroyers that you could do. However, I just think you're going to get more money's worth out of the other two options. If the torpedoes were longer ranged, let's say for me, if they were 8-kilometer range, then I'd actually might lean more towards this build as an example. But because they're relatively short, not as short as Podvoisky, just again, kind of comparing different ships for you guys, you know, it's 4 kilometers. So really not going to invest in torpedoes on the Podvoisky. But it is an option for the Nicholas, and I think I have something similar-ish to this on the gearing. I think I have this exact build on the gearing, if I'm being honest. I'd have to look, but it gives you an idea. Regardless, I would just for the tier, the ship in general, you know, you're kind of investing a little bit more in the guns, but you can get maybe a little bit more mileage out of this setup or this setup, which this is another very standard. I'd say this is one of the main two standard builds I would say for American destroyers is this build and this build. It really goes between these two. One of the reasons why you take this, you don't have superintendent, which means you only get 3 smokes, is because you're utilizing islands, maybe you're utilizing friendly smoke screens. So then the incentive for 4 smoke screens is just not as much there when you're trying to utilize what's happening around you, teammate smoke, or just islands on the map. So maybe I've just talked myself into this because I just want another defensive AA. I want to shoot those planes out of the sky. So yeah, so this is I guess I'll just say this is probably the route I'm going to go, but it might change. I might end up testing out radio location and incoming fire alert one day. Who knows? So yeah, I hope this video has been helpful in just going ahead and wrapping it up. Again, the Nicholas is a very solid tier 5 destroyer. I highly recommend playing her. If you're new to the game, I recommend for players to play through the American destroyer line first. And then maybe you want to do something, because it's a hybrid destroyer line, you get the mix of guns and torpedoes. And then, maybe then you go to like a Japanese destroyer line where it's a lot more emphasis, the torpedo line of Japanese destroyers. We get that better concealment and longer range torpedoes, so on and so forth. But yeah, so this is the Nicholas. So if you liked today's video, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, give it a thumbs down. Subscribe if you do want to see more. And if you haven't subscribed, I really appreciate the support as we continue to grow the community here with you as we're getting close to 300 subscribers as recording this. So that's really cool. So until next time, take care.